All right, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into some really powerful stories, some tales from the clinic that get to the hearts of a huge disconnect, the gap between how we look on the outside and what's really going on inside. And let's just start with this. This is from a guy named James. He's 40 years old, and on paper, he has it all. Just listen to that again. How could he explain that having everything so good only made him more nervous because he had that much more to lose? Wow, that one sentence just perfectly nails this quiet and honestly super common struggle. Because that's really the theme here, right? This massive disconnect between the successful person the world sees and the absolute turmoil that's churning away just beneath the surface. I mean, this just breaks down James's world perfectly. On the surface, successful businessman, great lifestyle, his own wife thought he was the sorted one in the relationship. But on the inside, it was a totally different story. Constant anxiety, this deep, gnawing fear of losing it all. He literally felt like he was losing his mind. It's the classic case of what you see is absolutely not what you get. And look, this internal battle, it isn't just one thing. It's not just anxiety. As we're about to see, it shows up in a whole bunch of different ways for different people. So for James, yeah, it was that constant worry. But then you have Rachel. For her, it was this anxiety about not being able to sleep, which, of course, is the very thing that kept her wide awake at night. Then there's John, who would get this red mist of anger over the tiniest things, and it felt totally out of his control. And for Pam, it was this heavy, persistent depression that just made everything feel dark and pointless. So you see, 4 different people, 4 very different battles, but there's a common thread running through all of them. So when you're faced with these intense feelings, what's your first instinct? What's that knee-jerk reaction? For pretty much all of us, it's to fight back. But that's often where the real problem actually begins. So James decides he's going to do something about this. He tries meditation. But he walks in with this really common idea about what's supposed to happen, an idea that it turns out is actually pretty unhelpful. He thought, like so many of us do, that the whole point was to wage war on his own mind. You know, to stop the thoughts, to crush the unpleasant feelings, to clear everything out. But here's the thing. That approach is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It just makes things worse. The real breakthrough, the moment everything changed for these people, came from a totally counterintuitive shift in strategy. It had nothing to do with fighting harder. It was about changing the entire game. Okay, so look at this. The instinctive reaction is to fight the feeling, right? To get rid of it. But all that does is create more tension. The mindful approach flips that completely. Instead of fighting the feeling, you just observe your resistance to it. The goal isn't to get rid of the problem. It's to change your relationship to the problem. And that's what creates space. Can you imagine the surprise for James when he's told to actually stop focusing on his anxiety? Instead, the advice was to focus on all the energy he was spending trying to push it away. And suddenly, this light bulb goes off. He realized that his obsession with controlling the anxiety was the very thing that was feeding it. And this is where the idea of kindness comes in. Now, we're not talking about weakness or just letting yourself off the hook. For John, who was battling that intense anger, the turning point was learning to meet that red mist with kindness, not to excuse it, but to simply allow it to be there for a moment, to give it a bit of space without judging or criticizing it, the same way he'd comfort his own daughter if she was upset. Now for Pam, who was dealing with that heavy cloak of depression, a really powerful analogy is what finally helped her see things differently. Think about it like this. Your mind, your core self, is like a vast, clear blue sky. It's always there and it's fundamentally calm. All those depressive thoughts, the anxious thoughts, the anger, they're just clouds passing through. The problem is we get so focused on the dark, stormy clouds that we completely forget the blue sky even exists. So the goal isn't to become some kind of master of the universe who can eliminate all clouds forever. The goal is just to remember that the sky, your calm, steady self, is always there, no matter what the weather looks like. So, what happened after this big shift in perspective? Well, it wasn't some magic cure. It wasn't like all their problems vanished, but it was a profound, life-altering change. And this is absolutely crucial. This isn't about trying to achieve a state where you never feel bad again. That's just not realistic. Life is going to throw stuff at you. The real power comes from changing your relationship with those difficult feelings. The moment you stop wrestling with them, you take away their power over you. So what did this new perspective actually look like? Well, for James, he's no longer fearful of worry itself. For Rachel, she now accepts that, hey, some nights her sleep won't be perfect, and that's okay. John can feel that anger start to bubble up, but now he has a sense of perspective. And Pam now knows that her thoughts are just thoughts. They can come and go, but they can't actually harm her ever again. And all of this leads us to the final, really powerful irony at the heart of this entire journey. James really just says it all right here. The irony was, the second he stopped fighting the feeling, the moment he gave up the struggle, it just didn't show up as much. The very act of letting go is what finally set him free. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. What's the feeling that you're always fighting? What's that constant war you're waging inside? And just ask yourself, what might happen? What could possibly change if you just decided to stop fighting?